So the first thing we have to do is take a look at the Meg Army list. We have over 650 of these. They've been developed by myself and a team which is full of historians and people interested in specialist periods. So they're a really rich resource. So let's take a look at the Viking list, page 1. What you'll see is it has all the main troop types on there and the generals and information about the army. So if we start at the top, it tells you what generals you can have. So these are instinctive generals, and you can have the normal 4, counting 3 sub-generals. It gives the date and a time period on the top right. It gives terrain types, standard and coastal, that are used in the game, and it tells you about what sort of camps they can have. So Vikings typically are standard and coastal, which makes sense given they're a sort of naval force that would often travel in by longboat. Underneath you have the main troop types. So they come in 3 batches. There are the sort of core of the army. You have the Huskarls, who are superior. They have some very interesting characteristics. They're formed flexibles, which means they can fight well in terrain, or they can close up into a tight shield wall. And they can have integral shooters because they mixed in archers with them. And they could actually travel on horseback, which is for dismountable, and the best ones of them are melee experts. The later ones have 2-handed cut and crush weapons, which are particularly nasty in hand-to-hand fighting once they get into the melee phase, less good in the charge phase. You have the berserkers, who are high-quality, devastating charge and melee experts, but you only have a few of those, and those typically you intermingle with the Viking herd, the mass of troops, which are short spear, also form flexible, and integral shooters. So basically the core of the Viking army is it can fight in terrain, or it can fight in the open close together. It's got very high quality Huskarls, it's got large numbers of troops that are hard to charge because of the integral shooters, and it's got this little neat batch of the berserkers. You can actually regrade them all as well, going below, and make them tougher still, and turn them into close order only fighters with shield wall and shove, which gives them a different character again, and makes them extremely resilient to attack and able to push things around a fair bit. And then you get batches of other things such as skirmishing archers, and you get some Irish warriors and some Irish kerns if they are fighting in Ireland. So you can have a fair few of those. So that's page 1 of the setup, and we then go to page 2. Page 2 has a slightly different bit of stuff in it. It tells you which allies you can have, and in the notes it tells you how the berserkers work. So you can take tugs of Huskarls or herd and have 1 or 2 berserker bases replace their normal bases. So you get a very interesting mixed base, which is very representative of Viking warfare, where you get a large bunch of warriors led by some berserkers. So often the best way to do that is to put 2 of those in there, 2 deep, in the middle of a 6 of other troops, and the berserkers turn that unit into a devastating charger unit, and they act as the punch in the initial charge. Again, that's very much in Viking character. And down below, from the historians amongst us, you've got a little bit of the historical notes, which talk about the basis of the list. So that's your starting position. You can have these to actually develop either a sort of raiding army, the classic raiding army which you could have, or you could do the steadier sort of foot armies that ended up fighting in mainstream battles. So that's our first task. So having done that, the next place to look is the Meg Army Builder. We have all the point systems built into a really easy to use Excel spreadsheet that's got lots of drop downs, so you can build your armies to heart's content and it will cost it for you. There's an important reason for this, which is point systems are fundamentally flawed if they're additive. It's one of the problems I found in early games I designed. Effectively what happens is if you have a standard troop type and you upgrade them to superior and say that's +10, and then you upgrade them to fully armoured and that's another +10, the value of the 2 combined, superior and fully armed, is a lot more than 20. So you can't have an additive system because it won't balance the troops. It will always bias towards superior, well-equipped troops. And that's probably why you find a lot of those troops in the games with those point systems. So this one is multiplicative. It's a bit cleverer and it balances it properly. And we've probably got the best balanced point system that's ever been made in wargaming as a result. So let's take a little look at the Army Builder. I'm going to do page 2 first, which is called the print format. So this is the neat one that will print you out your army. Once it's populated, it'll give you all the information in a neat format, starting at the top with your generals. It'll tell you your terrain types. It'll calculate your pre-battle system cards and your scouting cards for you. And then it'll put all the troops there with all the information you need. And at the very bottom, it even gives you the deployment percentages. So it tells you how many tugs and sugs you've got, and tells you how much you deploy if you're out scouted by a certain proportion. So you get everything you need on a single sheet. So what we need to do now is look at how we populate that. And we populate that on the previous sheet, which is called the input sheet. And the input sheet has got lots of drop downs. So essentially you can click on anything that is the sort of beige color, and you'll get a drop down so you can fill in the troop types you want. On the top right hand side, if you look, you'll see the PBS cards and scouting come up and the points. You'll also see a drop down where it says Maximus, where you can actually click a button and you actually can alter that between Maximus, Magnet and Pacto, and it automatically adjusts the points for you. So what I'm going to do is populate this now for a Viking army step by step. And I will talk you through what I've done, show you a few interim stages, the final army, and once I've built it in Maximus, I'm going to click Pacto, and I'm going to very quickly turn it into a Pacto version as well, and I hope that's very helpful for you all. So let me make a start. So what I've done in the first bit is I put in the data at the top. I'm choosing Viking, I'm choosing 1000 CE, it's standard and coastal terrain. And I picked some generals for starters. I may adjust them later. I'm going talented, competent, mediocre, which gives me a decent batch. And I've decided to go for the main field army and keep them all close order with shield walls. So I've got 3 Huskarls who have got superior, 2-handed cut and crush, shield wall and shove. So that gives them real character. And as I'm going for the field army with very few rough terrain troops, I've added 2 lots of skirmishing archers, 2 9s. The sugs shoot 3 deep. I've made them combat shy as an option. I don't mind that too much. They're not intending getting in a fight. They'll probably sit in front of some of the other infantry in the battle. That's an important theme about building armies in Meg. You'll find you really need to think about how the army is going to operate together, both between the generals and the troops and the main troops and the skirmishers, to get it right. It's not really a matter of just picking the troops you like and sticking them down and thinking about it on the day. So that's my first batch. So that gives me a decent place to start, and I'll move on and start adding other troops. I'm going to put some feared with berserkers in next, so they're very interesting as well. So here's the next bit. So this is quite an important bit. The numbers on the left, by the way, are the order and numbers of the tugs and sugs. Tugs being tactical unit groups, main battle troops, main battle units, if you want to think of it that way. Sugs, skirmishing unit groups, skirmishers. If you don't put the numbers in, it won't put the points in. So that's one of the safety measures in the device. But it also allows us to very easily handle units, tugs that we create with multiple troop types. So here I've put 2 herd in. The herds can be in 9, so I'm going to bulk them up to full size, and each of them can have 2 berserkers in, up to a total of 4 berserkers. So these are my main attack herd, led by berserkers. They're going to be 3 files wide, but the middle file is going to be packed with 2 berserkers. So that gives you a very good feel of an attack line being led by a wave of berserkers. And the berserkers are superior, devastating, charging melee expert, which in the rules means they have the chances of calling shatters on the enemy and causing mayhem. So again, that gives very much the character of the Viking fighting. I've created 2 of those. I have deliberately not put integral shooters into those, which is an optional characteristic for the herd, because I'm going to use them in an aggressive attack manner rather than standing and being charged, which is what integral shooter is better for. So you'll see I will add that in the next ones as I bulk out the army. Okay, and let's go for the next bit where I've started adding other items. So I've added some normal herd. I've put integral shooters into those, so I've managed to get 4 units in there. That's got me up to 9 tugs, which is a nice number because you break on half, so that forces the break point up to 5. And then what I've done here, I've done a little bit of jiggering around to get the points right. So what I've done compared to the early one, and you'll find this, you'll build a base and you'll tweak it as you go. I've actually dropped a second general down to mediocre on the basis that with 9 tugs I don't need that many cards. And that has given me enough points actually to put Integral Shooter into the 2 9s with the Berserkers as well. So this is now looking quite a nice army. I dropped one of the skirmishers down to 6 to allow that. So with 991 points, we're just about in the right sort of space. And just to go through the final bits to get it in print form, if you now go back to the print format, if you click on the drop down for display, you'll see true and false. And those are the things that you need to click on. So you need to unclick and click false, and it will actually pick up everything that's real and load it into this page. So I'll just do that for you and then give a look at the end result. So here's your final army now in print form, having clicked that. So it lays it all out in a really neat fashion for playing the game. So if we start from the top, you've now got 4 generals. Talented Instinctive, a 4-card general. A Competent Instinctive for 3. 2 mediocres with 2 each. So we've got ourselves 4, 7, 9, 11 cards. We've got 11 cards, which is pretty decent given what we're trying to manage below. The army's got a PBS of 6, which is enough to cope because you need 1 to actually decide territories and 5 to play the 5 days represented by the pre-battle system. It's obviously got very little scouting, so it's only at scouting 2, so there's a good chance the enemy will get a good look at where you are in your deployment. That said, it's a very chunky, solid army. You've got the 3 Huskarls who are really dangerous. They're actually very good at stopping enemy cavalry with the shield wall, and then very good at smashing them up with 2-handed cut and crush weapons, which are capable of bringing down horses. They've also got shove, which gives them an extra edge against infantry, so they are extremely tough. Put those between 2 herd and they're very dangerous. We've 2 attacking herd led by berserkers. They're nice chunky 9s. We've got 2 berserkers in the front line. So they're going to get devastating charges, which are going to charge with +2 for devastating charge and +1 for superior, and have a chance of causing shatters. So there's a good chance the berserkers will lead a wedge, if you like, of Vikings and do a very good job with those. So that gives us 5 very strong tugs. And then there are 4 tugs of herd, all of which have got shield wall, shove and integral shooters. So they're all very capable of holding their own. Integral shooter is archers intermingled. It means that what they do is they get some extra help of shooting at things charging them. So those 4 are particularly useful defensive formations. We have 2 8s and 2 6s, so that gives a little bit of strength with the 2 8s. And then we've got 2 little blocks of skirmishing archers. We've got a 9 and a 6, which can provide some firepower and can either deal with some rough terrain, or if there isn't a rough terrain, can sit in front of the herd and protect them from firepower and provide some shooting against enemy troops. Or alternatively, could sit in front of the berserker herd formations and try and put some firepower on them before they're charged. As you can see, I'm thinking a lot about how to use it before finishing the design. The talented instinctive can move 4 together, so that can deal with a very solid block. So that could take 2 herd and 2 Huskarls as a single block. The competent instinctive could take the 2 with the berserkers, or 1 with the berserker and the other 2 herd. And the mediocre could actually lead the berserkers. You could put 1 mediocre with each of the berserker ones and have the general fight in the front rank for an extra bonus. So my preference probably would be a mediocre with each of the berserkers. Add another unit to each of those, so add a herd with each of them of 8, so those are 2s. Maybe put all the put the Huskarls with 2 herd under a competent and 2 Huskarls under a talented, so you can get them wherever you like. And that's a pretty pokey army and should feel very, very Viking. So as a final change now, I'm going to change this army into a Pacto army. And Pacto use exactly the same lists. All that you do is you change the maxima and minima for the number of bases, and that changes so it is a quarter of the minimum and a third of the maximum rounded up. And then the tug sizes change, so most are 2s. So they drop back to a single file of 2s. You can have paws as 3s, pikes are 3s, things like elephants can be 1s, battle wagons are 1s, and skirmishes generally in 2s. So I've rejigged it. So all I have to do that is click on the selector on the variant plate and turn it into Pacto, and you'll see it's automatically changed the points of the generals. The point of the figures stays exactly the same. There's absolutely no difference. I've tweaked it down to 2s. The berserkers are no longer in a joint tug. They're an independent unit, if you like, and that gets it up to 11. So the breakpoint is slightly higher. Should play very, very nicely actually in Pacto as a Pacto variant. Most of the rest are the same. What's important is it's pretty much the same number of moving parts. So the game, you will find, will feel very much like the big game, just played with more figures. It's a miniaturized version. And if you now take a look at it on the Army printout one, you'll get a prettier version. And here it is, just to take a look at in that format. Hope you like that. Same thing with Magna. If you do Magna, it's a slight tweak again to the way you use the list. You just use the Magna version. Build yourself a 7,500 point list instead. The Pacto one, as you can see, is 3,500, which is a normal level of play. So just a few closing comments. Of course, that same process works for any army. You have 650 to plus, I think 670, I think, to play with. It covers all of history. The team have done a magnificent job. The characteristics in the list in particular bring the individual armies to life. So you will find, for instance, there are 7 eras of Romans, but unlike many sets where they're all the same, in effect, they are actually very varied, actually, in terms of their characteristics, going from the very beginning, the Polybian era, through the mid-Republic and into the early Imperial, the later Imperial, the Dominate and the Federati. They are just very, very different in army form, and that's what brings out one of the biggest compliments I get about Meg, which is it's got a superb historical feel. People often say Huns feel like Huns, Rome feels like Romans, Samurai feel like Samurai, and I put it to you that Vikings feel like Vikings. So I'm going to give this army a go actually in one of my demo battles coming up over the next few months. Thanks for joining me, and I hope you now know how to design an army.